I woke up that Tuesday morning to the sound of heavy machinery tearing through concrete, and by the time I threw on clothes and ran outside, half of my pump house was already rubble. The woman standing next to a clipboard wore a lime green blazer that seemed to glow in the early morning sun. Her blonde hair teased into a helmet that probably required an entire can of hairspray. She didn't even glance my way as I sprinted down the gravel path that led to the old stone structure my grandfather had built in 1947. "What the hell are you doing?" I shouted over the grinding of the excavator's hydraulic arm. She turned slowly, her expression radiating the kind of smugness that comes from someone who believes they hold all the power in the world. "Mr. Victor Whitmore, I presume? I'm Brenda Calloway, president of the Meadowbrook Valley HOA. We're removing this unauthorized structure from community property." "Community property? This is my land. That pump house has been here for 78 years. Brenda tapped her pen against the clipboard with each word. "According to our recent survey, this structure sits 2 feet over the property line into HOA-maintained common area. You received notice 2 weeks ago." "I never got any notice. We sent it certified mail to the address on file." She smiled, and it reminded me of a shark sizing up prey. "Not our problem if you don't check your mail." The excavator took another bite out of the pump house, and I heard something crack deep inside the structure. My chest tightened. "You need to stop right now. That building contains critical water infrastructure." "Infrastructure?" Brenda laughed, a harsh sound that cut through the morning air. "It's an eyesore. Several residents have complained about the unsightly appearance of this decrepit building. The HOA board voted unanimously to have it removed." "Listen to me very carefully," I said, trying to keep my voice level even as panic clawed at my throat. "That pump house doesn't just serve my property. It's part of the original water system that feeds the entire Meadowbrook Valley development and 3 other communities down the mountain." Brenda waved her hand dismissively. "That's absurd. The county water system serves this area." "No, it doesn't. The county pipes only go as far as Highway 40. Everything from there up the mountain, including all of Meadowbrook Valley, gets water from the natural spring on my property. That pump house regulates pressure and flow for over 400 homes." For the first time, doubt flickered across her face, but she recovered quickly. "If that were true, we would have been informed during our planning meeting. Did you check with the county water department? Did you look at any historical records? Did you do any actual research before deciding to demolish a building?" The excavator operator had stopped, sensing the tension. Brenda's jaw clenched. "The HOA has authority over all structures visible from community streets. This building is unsightly and potentially dangerous." "It's about to be dangerous if you finish tearing it down," I said. "Those pipes carry pressurized water. If you rupture the main line, you'll flood this entire hillside and cut off water to everyone downhill." A man in khakis and a polo shirt jogged up to us, slightly out of breath. He had the look of someone who spent his weekends carefully edging his lawn with scissors. "Brenda, is everything all right?" I heard shouting. "Keith, this is Mr. Whitmore. He's claiming this shack is somehow essential to the community water supply." Keith Pemberton, whose name I knew from the obnoxiously cheerful HOA newsletters that showed up in my mailbox monthly, looked at the partially demolished pump house. "Well, that seems unlikely. Our water comes from the county." "No," I said slowly, as if explaining to children. "It doesn't. My family has maintained this water system since before this area was developed. When the developers built Meadowbrook Valley in 1985, they made an arrangement with my father to tap into our spring system rather than paying to extend county lines up the mountain." I've never heard anything about this, Keith said. That's because you've been on the HOA board for what, 2 years? This is institutional knowledge that apparently nobody bothered to preserve. I pulled out my phone. I have documentation, contracts, easement agreements, but right now you need to stop that excavator before you cause a disaster. Brenda crossed her arms. We have permits for this demolition. From whom? The HOA issues its own permits for work on community property. I stared at her. You can't issue permits for public utility infrastructure. This isn't public infrastructure. It's a private building on what our survey shows is common area. The situation was spiraling into absurdity, but the very real danger of a complete water system failure kept me focused. Fine. Call someone. Call the county planning office. Call the water department. Just stop the demolition until we figure this out. Brenda exchanged a look with Keith. We've already paid the contractor for the full day's work. Then pay him to stop. The HOA budget doesn't have room for wasteful spending. My hands clenched into fists. Wasteful. You're about to cut off water to hundreds of families. You're being dramatic, Brenda said. If this building were truly important, it would be properly documented and maintained by official authorities. It is documented. With the county, with the State Water Resources Board, and in the original development agreements for this entire area. I turned to the excavator operator, who was watching this exchange with growing concern. Sir, I'm telling you officially that if you continue demolition, you'll be liable for damages to critical infrastructure. The operator, a weathered man in his 50s, killed the engine. Look, I just take the jobs they give me. If there's a problem, I'm not getting in the middle of it. There's no problem, Brenda snapped. Resume work. No, the operator said. Not until this gets sorted out. I'm not risking my license over an HOA dispute. Brenda's face flushed red. We have a contract. And I have insurance that doesn't cover knowingly damaging utility infrastructure. He climbed down from the cab. Y'all work this out, then call me. As the operator walked back to his truck, Brenda turned her fury on me. This is harassment. You're interfering with legitimate HOA business. Show me the survey that says my pump house is on common property. She flipped through papers on her clipboard and thrust one at me. I examined it and immediately saw the problem. The survey was dated 3 weeks ago and showed property lines that didn't match any historical record I'd ever seen. More importantly, the surveyor's name was unfamiliar. Who did this survey? A licensed surveyor, Brenda said. What's his name? Ronald Pritchard. He's very reputable. I'd lived in this valley my entire life and knew every surveyor who worked the mountain communities. I've never heard of him. Did you verify his credentials? The HOA doesn't need to verify anything. We hired a professional. I took photos of the survey with my phone. This is wrong. These property lines don't match the county records. County records are often outdated, Keith offered. That's why we commissioned a new survey. The situation was deteriorating fast, and I needed to change tactics. Okay, let's table the property line dispute for now. Even if your survey is correct, you still need county approval to demolish any structure connected to water infrastructure. It's a pump house on private property, Brenda said. It's water infrastructure serving a public purpose. There are regulations. Show me these regulations. I pulled up the county code on my phone and started reading the relevant sections. Brenda listened with increasing irritation, while Keith at least had the decency to look concerned. Those codes apply to county-maintained systems, Brenda finally said. They apply to any water system serving multiple properties, regardless of ownership. A truck pulled up and a woman in her 30s hopped out. She wore yoga pants and an expression of confused worry. Brenda, What's going on? My water pressure dropped to almost nothing about 20 minutes ago. My stomach dropped. When did the excavator start hitting the building? The operator, who was still packing up his equipment, called back. About 25 minutes ago. The woman, who I recognized as Jennifer Carson from 2 streets over, looked at the partially demolished pump house. What is this place? It's the pump house that regulates water pressure for the valley, I said, and they've damaged it. What? Jennifer pulled out her phone. I need to call my husband. We have a newborn who needs bottles made. The water is still flowing, Brenda said quickly, just at lower pressure. For now, I said, but if the damage gets worse, the whole system could fail. Or worse, pipes could burst throughout the valley from pressure fluctuations. Jennifer's eyes widened. Brenda, what were you thinking? This structure is on common property and violates HOA guidelines. Who cares about guidelines if we don't have water? More vehicles were pulling up. Word was spreading fast in the way it does in small communities. A man in a bathrobe pulled up in a BMW, his face red with anger. My shower went cold mid-wash. What the hell is happening? I recognized him as Thomas Dalton, one of the wealthier residents who lived in the estates section of Meadowbrook Valley. He was also, ironically, on the HOA board. Thomas, Brenda said with forced calm, we're handling a small situation with Mr. Whitmore's unauthorized structure. My water pressure is shot, Thomas said. How is that small? The water pressure issue is unrelated. It's completely related, I said. You damaged the pump house and now the system is failing. Thomas looked at the demolished section of the building, then at Brenda. You did this. Without consulting the full board. We voted on it last month. We voted on removing an eyesore. Nobody said anything about it being a pump house for the whole community. Because Mr. Whitmore never properly informed anyone of its purpose. I pulled out my phone again. I have emails. I have letters. I have documentation going back 40 years about this water system. My father corresponded with the county, the developers, and yes, even the original HOA board back in 1987. Let me see those, Thomas demanded. I pulled up the email folder I'd organized years ago when my father died, and I inherited the property. The original agreements were scanned and stored in cloud storage. I forwarded the entire folder to Thomas's email address, which was listed on the HOA website. While Thomas scrolled through his phone, more residents arrived. The crowd was growing, and so was the anger. A woman with 2 small children demanded to know how she was supposed to do laundry. An elderly man worried about his medication that needed refrigeration, which required water for the cooling system in his home. Brenda tried to maintain control. Everyone, please calm down. The water is still functioning. At half pressure, someone shouted. And getting worse, another added. I needed to inspect the damage. I'm going inside what's left of the pump house. Nobody touch anything else. You can't go in there, Brenda said. It's unsafe. It's unsafe because you demolished half of it. I carefully climbed over the rubble. The excavator had torn away the eastern wall and part of the roof. Inside, the main pressure tank was intact, but I could see where vibrations from the demolition had loosened several pipe connections. Water was seeping from joints that should have been tight. The pressure gauge showed the system was down to 45 psi from the normal 70. The spring feed was still flowing, which was good. But the distribution system was compromised. If pressure dropped much further, air would get into the lines. That would mean days of work to purge the system and restore service properly. I took photos and videos of everything, documenting the damage. When I climbed back out, Thomas was in a heated argument with Brenda. This documentation is clear, Thomas said, waving his phone. This water system has been here since before our development existed. We have no authority over it. The building is on common property, Brenda insisted. According to a survey I'm now questioning, Thomas shot back. Even if it's accurate, we can't demolish essential infrastructure without proper approvals. We followed proper HOA procedures. HOA procedures don't supersede county regulations or existing easements. Thomas turned to me. What's the damage? Several pipe connections are compromised. The system is losing pressure. If I can get in there with proper equipment, I can make repairs, but it's going to take time. And everyone needs to conserve water until I stabilize the system. Jennifer spoke up. How long? Best case. 6 to 8 hours if I can get parts and the damage doesn't worsen. Worst case. 2 or 3 days if I have to rebuild major sections. The crowd erupted in angry voices, all directed at Brenda. She held up her hands. We didn't know the extent of the building's purpose. You didn't bother to find out, Thomas said coldly. You saw an old building you didn't like and decided to tear it down. The residents have been complaining about it for months. 3 residents complained, Keith said quietly. I reviewed the meeting minutes last night. 3 people out of 417 homes. Brenda shot him a look that could have melted steel. You're supposed to be supporting board decisions. I support decisions made with proper information. This wasn't. A police cruiser pulled into the growing chaos. Officer Miguel Santos, who had known since high school, stepped out and surveyed the scene. Got a call about a disturbance. What's going on here, Victor? I explained the situation while Brenda tried to interject her version. Miguel listened to both sides, examined what was left of the pump house, and shook his head. Madam, did you get county approval for this demolition? The HOA has authority over community property. That's not what I asked. Did you get county approval? We didn't need it. Miguel pulled out his radio. I'm going to call the county code enforcement office. They'll want to send someone out. This is an overreaction, Brenda said. Madam, you've potentially damaged infrastructure serving multiple homes. That's a county matter. Within 30 minutes, a code enforcement officer named Patricia Hughes arrived. She was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who'd been with the county for decades. She took one look at the situation, and her expression hardened. Who authorized this demo? Brenda stepped forward. I'm the HOA president. We had proper authorization. Patricia pulled out her tablet and started checking records. I don't see any permit applications for this address. HOA property doesn't require county permits for improvements. Demolishing a structure connected to water infrastructure absolutely requires permits. Patricia walked around the pump house, taking photos and notes. This is a violation of County Code Section 18.24.060. Work performed on water systems without proper permits and inspections. We didn't know it was a water system. Ignorance isn't a defense. Patricia turned to me. Are you the property owner? Yes, madam, Victor Whitmore. My family has owned this land and maintained this water system since 1947. Do you have documentation of the water system's existence and purpose? I showed her the same files I'd shared with Thomas. Patricia reviewed them carefully, cross-referencing with something on her tablet. These match county records, she said. Mr. Whitmore, you're going to need to make repairs and have them inspected before I can sign off on this system returning to normal operation. Understood. How fast can you schedule an inspection? Given the emergency nature and the number of homes affected, I can do an initial inspection this afternoon once you've stabilized the system. Full compliance inspection will need to follow standard scheduling. That works. Patricia turned to Brenda. Mrs. Calloway, I'm issuing a stop work order on this property. Any further demolition or construction is prohibited pending investigation. On what grounds? Unpermitted work affecting public water infrastructure. You'll be receiving official notice of code violations within 48 hours. The HOA may face fines up to $5,000 per violation per day until this is resolved. Brenda's face went pale. That's excessive. That's county code. You should have checked before demolishing a 78-year-old structure. Patricia handed her a tablet to sign. This is your official notice. Any questions need to go through the county code enforcement office during business hours. After Patricia left, the crowd of residents surrounded Brenda and Keith. The anger was palpable. Thomas took charge, his voice cutting through the noise. Everyone, I'm calling an emergency HOA board meeting for tonight at 7 p.m. All residents are invited. We need to address this situation and determine next steps. I'll have water restored by then, I said, but I need to get to work. Can everyone please clear out so I can focus? The crowd slowly dispersed, though many people shot angry looks at Brenda as they left. Jennifer came up to me before leaving. Thank you for fixing this, and I'm sorry you're dealing with this mess. Not your fault. I voted against Brenda in the last election. Guess my instincts were right. After everyone left, I assessed the work ahead. The pump house was a disaster, but the core systems were salvageable. I called my buddy Marcus Wheeler, who ran a plumbing supply business in town. Victor, heard you got HOA trouble. News travels fast. Small town, man. What do you need? I rattled off a list of pipes, fittings, and sealants. Can you deliver within an hour? For you? 30 minutes. True to his word, Marcus showed up with everything I needed plus some extra supplies. Figured you might need backup options. No charge for the rush delivery. Marcus, I can pay. After all the times you've helped me fix my well system. We're even. Besides, whole town's going to owe you after you fix this mess. I got to work. The first priority was stabilizing the pressure system. 3 pipe connections had worked loose from the vibrations, and the main pressure regulator valve had shifted slightly out of alignment. I shut down the system completely, drained the tanks, and began repairs. The work was meticulous. Each connection had to be perfect. Any leak would cause pressure loss and potential contamination. I worked steadily through the afternoon, stopping only to drink water and wipe sweat from my face. Around 4 p.m., Patricia returned with another official, a man introduced as Gary Hoffman from the County Water Resources Division. Mr. Whitmore, mind if we observe your work? Not at all. Just stay clear of the active workspace. Gary asked intelligent questions about the system design, the spring source, and the distribution network. He seemed impressed by the setup. Your grandfather knew what he was doing. This is solid engineering for 1947, better than some modern systems I've seen. He was a mining engineer, understood water and pressure systems inside out. Have you done any upgrades over the years? New pressure tanks in 2003, replaced all the valves in 2015. Regular maintenance on all components. I have logs if you want to see them. I'll need those for my report, but from what I'm seeing, you've maintained this system well. By 6 p.m., I had the main repairs complete. I slowly brought the system back online, checking each gauge and connection. Pressure built gradually, reaching 65 psi and holding steady. That's good, Gary said. Close to your normal operating pressure. Normal is 70, but I'm keeping it slightly lower until I can do a full system inspection tomorrow. Want to make sure nothing else was damaged that I haven't found yet. Patricia signed off on the temporary repairs. You'll need to submit a full inspection request within 2 weeks for the permanent fix. Will do. They left, and I finally allowed myself to relax slightly. My phone had been buzzing all afternoon with messages. Most were from residents thanking me or asking about water status. A few were reporters from local news outlets who'd gotten wind of the story. I ignored the reporters and sent a mass text to the community contact list I'd maintained for years. Water system repaired and back online. Pressure should be normal or near normal throughout the valley. Please report any issues directly to me. Then I headed home, showered, and prepared for what I expected would be a very contentious HOA meeting. The community center was packed when I arrived at 6:45. Every seat was taken, and people lined the walls. The energy in the room was electric and hostile. Brenda sat at the front table with Keith and 3 other board members, looking significantly less confident than she had that morning. Thomas called the meeting to order at 7 sharp. "Thank you all for coming on short notice. We're here to discuss this morning's incident involving the demolition of Mr. Whitmore's pump house and the subsequent water system disruption." "It wasn't just a disruption," someone shouted. "We lost water." "I understand emotions are high," Thomas said. "But we need to handle this professionally. Mr. Whitmore, would you like to explain the situation for everyone?" I stood and walked to the front. For the next 20 minutes, I laid out the complete history of the water system, how my grandfather had developed the spring, how the developers in 1985 had negotiated access to the system rather than paying for county water extensions, how my family had maintained the system for decades, charging nothing, asking nothing, just keeping it running as a service to the community. Your HOA president decided to demolish the pump house without any research into what it was or what it did. She didn't check county records. She didn't ask questions. She saw an old building she didn't like and ordered it destroyed. "That's not fair," Brenda started. "Let him finish," Thomas said sharply. "The result was damage to infrastructure serving over 400 homes. If I hadn't been home this morning, if I hadn't stopped the demolition when I did, the entire system could have failed. You would have been without water for days, possibly weeks." The room erupted in angry voices. Residents stood, shouting questions and accusations at the board. Thomas had to bang his gavel repeatedly to restore order. "Mrs. Calloway, what do you have to say?" Brenda stood, and I could see her hands shaking slightly. "The board acted on information we had available. We commissioned a survey that showed the structure on common property. We had received complaints about its appearance. We followed proper procedures for HOA decision-making." "You didn't follow county procedures," someone yelled. "We weren't required to." "The county disagrees," I said. "You've been cited for code violations. The HOA is facing fines of up to $5,000 per day." Gasps echoed through the room. Keith stood up. "I want it on record that I was not aware of the full implications of this action. If I had known that building was critical infrastructure, I would have voted against demolition." 2 other board members quickly echoed his statement. Only Brenda and 1 other member, a woman named Susan Fletcher, remained silent. Thomas looked at the board. "We need to discuss potential legal liability. The HOA may be responsible for repair costs, damages, and county fines. We'll need to consult with our attorney." "We have liability insurance," Susan said. "Insurance doesn't cover willful negligence or code violations," Thomas replied. "And this might qualify as both." A man in the audience stood. "I move that we vote to remove Brenda Calloway as HOA president effective immediately." "Seconded," 3 people said simultaneously. Brenda's face flushed. "You can't do that." "According to our bylaws, a special vote can be called with support from 20% of homeowners," Thomas said. "Show of hands for those supporting this motion." Nearly every hand in the room went up. Thomas did a quick count. That's well over 20%. Motion carries. We'll schedule a formal vote within 30 days as required by bylaws, but effective immediately. You're suspended from presidential duties pending that vote. This is outrageous. What's outrageous is your reckless decision-making, Thomas said coldly. I'm assuming interim presidential duties. Susan, given your support of this action, I'm asking you to resign from the board. Susan stood abruptly. Fine. This board is a joke anyway. She stormed out. The meeting continued for another hour, covering financial implications, legal strategy, and community repairs. Several residents asked about compensating me for my repair work and years of free maintenance. That's not necessary, I said. Yes, it is, Jennifer Carson spoke up. You've been providing a service to this community for free. You've maintained a system that by all rights the county or an HOA should be paying for, and when our president damaged it, you fixed it immediately at your own expense. The parts cost maybe $300. What about your time? Your expertise? Thomas intervened. I propose the HOA establish a maintenance fund for the water system. We'll compensate Mr. Whitmore for past services and create an ongoing maintenance agreement. I don't need compensation for past work, but you deserve it. And the community needs a formal arrangement to ensure this system continues to be properly maintained. After more discussion, they voted to establish a fund and offer me an annual maintenance contract. The terms were generous, probably too generous, but I was too exhausted to argue. The meeting finally ended around 10 p.m. People came up to thank me, to apologize for the HOA's actions, to express their support. It was overwhelming and humbling. Marcus caught me on the way to my truck. Told you the whole town would owe you. Nobody owes me anything. Victor, you just saved 400 homes from going dry. Take the win. I drove home, emotionally and physically drained. The pump house was still a disaster, half demolished and exposed to the elements. I'd need to completely rebuild it, probably with county inspections at every step. But the water was flowing, the system was stable, and the community knew the truth. The next morning, I woke to find 3 news vans parked near my property. A reporter from the local NBC affiliate was doing a stand-up in front of the damaged pump house. I have no comment, I told them when they swarmed me. Mr. Whitmore, viewers want to know how an HOA could demolish critical infrastructure. Ask the HOA. We tried. Mrs. Calloway isn't returning calls. I pushed past them and got back to work. The pump house needed a temporary roof to protect the equipment from weather. I spent the morning rigging tarps and plywood, creating a shelter that would last until I could do proper reconstruction. Patricia Hughes showed up around noon with more paperwork. You're going viral. What? She showed me her phone. The story had hit social media. Videos of the demolished pump house, interviews with angry residents, and heated discussion about HOA overreach were spreading across Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok. Great, I muttered. County is taking this seriously. We've opened a formal investigation into the HOA's actions, and the district attorney's office has been notified. Why? Potential criminal negligence, reckless endangerment. When you damage infrastructure serving hundreds of people without proper authorization, that crosses into criminal territory. My stomach tightened. I hadn't wanted this to become a criminal matter. I just wanted my pump house fixed and the water running. What happens now? Investigation continues. DA decides whether to file charges. Could take weeks or months. After Patricia left, I called Thomas. Did you know the DA is investigating? Just found out. Our attorney says the HOA needs to cooperate fully. We're turning over all records related to the demolition decision. This is getting out of hand. Victor, Brenda made a decision that could have left hundreds of families without water. There need to be consequences. Over the next week, the story grew. National news outlets picked it up. I did one interview with a local paper and immediately regretted it when they twisted my words to make the situation seem more dramatic than it was. The pump house became a symbol in larger debates about HOA power, property rights, and infrastructure neglect. Brenda hired a lawyer. The HOA hired a different lawyer. I got subpoenaed for documents. The County Code Enforcement Office issued formal citations with fines totaling $15,000 for 3 separate violations. Through it all, I focused on repairs. With the media attention came unexpected help. A local contractor offered to rebuild the pump house at cost. An engineering firm volunteered to do a complete system assessment for free. Materials suppliers donated items. The community rallied in a way I'd never experienced. 2 weeks after the demolition, the rebuilt pump house stood complete. It was better than the original, with modern materials and improved access for maintenance, but designed to match the historical aesthetic of my grandfather's stone construction. Patricia and Gary signed off on all inspections. "This is quality work," Gary said. "System is actually more efficient than before." "Silver lining," I said. The formal HOA vote to remove Brenda happened on a Wednesday evening. It was unanimous. She didn't even show up for the meeting. 3 days later, the DA filed charges. Criminal mischief, reckless endangerment, and willful violation of county codes. Not against the HOA itself, but against Brenda personally and the surveyor, Ronald Pritchard, who it turned out wasn't properly licensed in our county and had falsified the property survey. The case moved slowly through the system. Brenda maintained her innocence, claiming she'd relied on professional advice and followed HOA procedures. Pritchard tried to flee the state, but was arrested at the Colorado border. In October, 5 months after that Tuesday morning when I'd watched half my pump house collapse into rubble, the trial began. I testified about the water system, the damage, and the immediate danger created by the unauthorized demolition. Other residents testified about the loss of water service and the stress it caused. The prosecution presented evidence that Brenda had been warned by Keith about potential issues with the pump house, but had dismissed those concerns. They showed emails where she'd pushed for quick demolition before anyone could object. They demonstrated that she'd hired Pritchard specifically because he was cheap and willing to provide the property line results she wanted. The defense argued that Brenda had believed she was acting in the HOA's best interests and that any errors were honest mistakes, not criminal acts. The jury didn't buy it. After 3 days of deliberation, they found Brenda guilty of reckless endangerment and willful violation of county codes. The criminal mischief charge didn't stick, but the 2 convictions were serious enough. The judge wasn't lenient. "Mrs. Calloway, your reckless decision-making endangered hundreds of people. You held a position of trust and authority, and you abused that position through willful ignorance and negligence. I'm sentencing you to 6 months in county jail, suspended pending successful completion of 2 years probation. You'll pay restitution to Mr. Whitmore for all repair costs, plus a fine of $25,000 to the county. You're prohibited from serving on any HOA board or similar organization during your probation." Brenda stood stone-faced as the sentence was read. Pritchard got 18 months in jail for fraud and falsifying professional documents. The HOA itself faced civil liability. Their insurance refused to cover the incident, citing willful negligence exclusions. The association ended up paying $75,000 in settlements, repairs, and legal fees. Special assessments on all homeowners to cover the costs created another wave of anger, though most of it was directed at Brenda rather than the community as a whole. Through it all, the water kept flowing. The new pump house stood as a monument to what happens when people don't do their homework. Thomas led the HOA with actual competence, establishing proper review procedures and community input processes before any major decisions. Jennifer Carson brought her baby by one afternoon in December. Wanted you to meet Emma. She's 3 months old now. The baby was tiny and perfect, sleeping peacefully in her mother's arms. She's beautiful. She almost didn't have clean water for her bottles because of one woman's stupidity. But you made sure she did. Thank you. After they left, I sat on the porch of the rebuilt pump house and looked out over Meadowbrook Valley. Lights were coming on in houses as evening approached. Somewhere in each of those homes, someone was washing dishes or taking a shower or making dinner or watering plants, all using water that flowed from the spring on my property, through the system my grandfather built and my father maintained and I had now preserved. The whole situation had been insane. An HOA president so focused on enforcing aesthetic rules that she'd nearly caused a humanitarian crisis. A system so important that most people didn't even know it existed until it almost disappeared. A community that came together when things went wrong. Marcus stopped by with pizza and beer. You made the national news again. They're doing some special about HOA nightmares and your pump house is Exhibit A. Lucky me. You going to write a book, make millions? I'm going to keep fixing water pipes and living quietly. Boring. After the last 6 months, boring sounds pretty good. We ate pizza and watched the sun set over the valley. The water system hummed quietly in the background, pressure steady at 70 psi, everything working exactly as it should. The next morning, I did my regular maintenance check. Pressure gauges, flow rates, filter conditions, pump operations. Everything logged in the notebook I'd kept since taking over from my father. The new HOA contract paid me well for this work, but I would have done it anyway. Some things are bigger than money. A car pulled up, and Thomas got out with a framed certificate. The Homeowners Association wants to present this to you, official recognition for service to the community. That's not necessary. Humor us. We're trying to not be the worst HOA in America anymore. The certificate was actually nice, properly framed with formal language thanking me for decades of service and dedication. I hung it in the pump house, next to my grandfather's original engineering drawings from 1947. How's the new board working out? I asked. Better. We're actually communicating with residents now. Novel concept. Thomas looked at the rebuilt pump house. I keep thinking about how close we came to disaster. If you hadn't been home that morning, if you hadn't stopped the demolition when you did. But I was, and I did. Still. Makes you think about all the systems we depend on without knowing they exist. All the people maintaining things behind the scenes while the rest of us go about our lives. That's most infrastructure. Power, water, roads, communications. All maintained by people nobody thinks about until something breaks. Well, this community thinks about you now, probably more than you'd like. He wasn't wrong. I still got stopped at the grocery store by residents wanting to thank me or tell me their side of the HOA drama. I'd gone from anonymous property owner to local celebrity, and I didn't particularly enjoy the attention. But the water flowed, and that was what mattered. In February, nearly a year after the demolition, I got a letter from Brenda's lawyer. She wanted to apologize directly as part of her probation requirements. I wasn't interested, but my own lawyer suggested I at least hear her out. We met at a coffee shop in town. Brenda looked different, smaller somehow, without her power suit and perfect hair. She ordered tea and sat across from me with the posture of someone expecting punishment. "Thank you for meeting me. Your lawyer said it was part of your probation. It is, but I wanted to do it anyway." She stirred her tea, not meeting my eyes. "I was wrong about everything. The pump house, the survey, not listening when you warned me. I convinced myself I was helping the community by enforcing standards and maintaining property values. But really, I just liked having power over people. That's pretty self-aware. 6 months of therapy will do that. My counselor says I used the HOA to compensate for lack of control in other parts of my life. My marriage was falling apart, my kids won't talk to me, and I felt powerless. So, I became a tyrant over neighborhood aesthetics. I didn't know what to say to that. Part of me wanted to stay angry, but she mostly just seemed pathetic now. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she continued. "I know what I did was inexcusable. People could have been seriously hurt, but I wanted you to know that I understand the magnitude of my mistake and I'm truly sorry." "Okay." "That's it, just okay? What do you want me to say? You screwed up, you're facing consequences, and you're apologizing. I accept your apology. It doesn't change what happened, but I accept it." She nodded slowly. "Fair enough. For what it's worth, I'm glad you were there to stop the demolition. And I'm glad you fixed everything." After she left, I sat with my coffee and thought about power and responsibility, and how easily things can go wrong when people forget that rules exist to serve the community, not the other way around. Spring came to Meadowbrook Valley with wildflowers and warm breezes. The spring that fed the water system ran clear and strong, just as it had for generations. I did my maintenance rounds, checking systems, replacing filters, logging data. The pump house became something of a tourist attraction. People would drive up to take photos of the place that had caused such chaos. The HOA actually put up a small historical marker explaining the water system's history and importance. Thomas asked if that was okay, and I told him to do whatever he wanted as long as nobody touched the equipment. Life settled into normalcy. The news crews went away. The social media posts faded. The criminal case closed. The civil settlements were paid. The community moved on to other concerns and dramas. But I never forgot that Tuesday morning when I'd woken to the sound of demolition and rushed out to find my grandfather's legacy being destroyed by someone who couldn't be bothered to ask questions first. It was a reminder that systems we depend on are often more fragile than we realize, and that ignorance combined with authority can be incredibly dangerous. The water still flows through Meadowbrook Valley, down the mountain to 3 other communities, bringing life and sustenance to hundreds of homes. My grandfather built something that lasted nearly 80 years. My father maintained it. Now it's my turn to keep it running. And every time I check the pressure gauges and see that steady 70 psi, every time I log the flow rates and filter conditions, every time I walk through the rebuilt pump house, I remember why this matters. It's not about recognition or payment or vindication. It's about making sure that when someone turns on their tap, clean water comes out. Everything else is just noise. Marcus stops by occasionally with pizza and beer. Jennifer brings Emma by every few months so I can see how much she's grown. Thomas sends me HOA meeting minutes even though I don't attend meetings, keeping me informed of board decisions that might affect the water system. The community has learned to value what they almost lost, and me. I keep doing what my family has always done. I maintain the system, I fix what breaks, and I make sure the water flows. It's not glamorous work. It's not exciting. But on that morning when Brenda Calloway ordered my pump house demolished because she didn't like how it looked, everyone learned just how essential that unglamorous work really is. The pump house stands rebuilt, stronger than before. The water flows clear and cold from the mountain spring. And somewhere in the valley below, someone is washing dishes or taking a shower or making dinner, never thinking about the system that makes it possible. That's exactly how it should be. Infrastructure works best when nobody has to think about it, but I think about it every day because someone has to.